Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. In today's live session, let's discuss all the important economics related articles which have appeared in various business related newspapers from 26th of March to 1st of April 2022. Let's begin the discussion now. The first very important article is related to the concept of geo-tagging. Now let me start with the basics here. What is the idea of a geo-tagging? I'm pretty sure by now you must have heard of the term longitude and latitude. Sir, where will I hear this particular term, right? A set of terms in geography. So you must have heard of the term longitude and latitude. In case of India, RBI as well as Government of India have been promoting digital payments, or the idea of a digital economy is being promoted by taking various measures. Now, whenever the government or let's say RBI takes these particular measures, it is also very important to evaluate whether these particular measures are being utilized by the people or not. Whether there is digital literacy in case of Indian economy, or the rural economy, or let's say in case of rural parts of India, are the POS machines useful? Are the people utilizing them? If not, what are the reasons, etc. And to evaluate all of this, and based on the analysis, the RBI wants to make a policy now. And for this particular reason, RBI is asking all the participants who are using the digital transaction infrastructure to provide geo-tagging. Now, what do you mean by geo-tagging here? As already mentioned, geo-tagging simply refers to providing the information of latitude and longitude of a machine which is being used by the, let's say, the server, or let's say the person who is going to provide a digital transaction service to you. So what do you mean by all of this? Imagine a person is living in rural part of India. He will go to a shop, purchase certain, let's say, vegetables, groceries, etc. He will make a transaction by using QR code. Okay, there's a QR code. He will scan the QR code, make a payment. Now the person who is going to provide this particular service, that is a shopkeeper, who has taken this particular, let's say, QR code service from a financial service provider, the financial service provider has to give the data related to what is the position in the form of latitude and longitude of this particular machine, right? It could be a point of sales machine, or it could be a QR code also. So all those service providers who have installed the POS machines or the QR code, now they will have to provide the information of this to Reserve Bank of India. Now you might be thinking, sir, why is RBI mandating all of this? These are some of the very important points. RBI is basically calling this as a geo-tagging process. And now RBI has introduced a framework for getting the geo-tagging data from all these particular service providers for achieving some of the very important objectives. First, RBI wants to find out what is the infrastructure density, right, in the form of how many machines, that is the POS machines are present, how many types of, or let's say how many types of QR codes have been installed in the rural part of India. So one, what is the infrastructure density in terms of, let's say, digital transactions they want to find. Sir, what is the importance of finding the infrastructure density? Imagine there is a village, there are 1,000 people in the village who are using, right, the digital transactions to make the payment, but there is only one QR code in that particular village. Don't you think it is the duty of RBI now to push more and more service providers to provide POS as well as QR code infrastructure in this village? Right, so one, you want to find out what is the infrastructure density. Second, we also want to find out, are the people in rural parts of India using this particular infrastructure to make payments? If there are villages which are using this particular infrastructure very well, and if there are certain villages where the infrastructure is present but people are not using it, now it is the duty of RBI to find out what are the reasons. Can we have a policy, right, wherein we will provide digital literacy to these people, and we will make, or we will popularize the digital transaction methods. So RBI says that I want to make a policy, but to make this particular policy wherein I want to promote digital transactions, I want to promote financial inclusion, I want to provide training, I want to basically provide the information to the people how to utilize all of these transactions, or let's say how to utilize this infrastructure. But for that, first and foremost, I need the consolidated data. And precisely for this reason, RBI is promoting the idea of a geo-tagging of all of these particular digital touch points or digital physical infrastructure. Done? Now, based on this, I have given a question here. Which of the following are the benefits of geo-tagging of payment touch points? Information of digital penetration in rural areas can be found out. Yes, that is true. Facilitate focused digital literacy programs. RBI simply says yes, we can do this also. Information about infrastructure density can also be obtained. The third statement, in fact, is true. Right, so all the three statements are true. Right option is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Now some of you might be thinking, sir, yes, you have told me about geo-tagging now. Thanks for refreshing the idea of latitude as well as longitude. But where do I use it? What is the use of this article for the UPSC? Absolutely correct question. What if, right, have a look at the statement now. What if this kind of a question is given in a descriptive paper? In the recent times, RBI has taken various measures to promote financial inclusion in India. Discuss these particular measures. 250 words. So there are so many measures, right? Along with those particular measures, you can even say that in order to have a better policy making, RBI now is following a framework of digital tagging of these particular infrastructure assets or infrastructure touch points. Done? So this is the first article. Let me go to the next article. Export Preparedness Index. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. Niti Aayog has been set up by the government, and this Niti Aayog prepares multiple types of indices. For example, there is a Composite Water Management Index, there is a Sustainable Development Goal Index, right, etc. But apart from these indices, there is one very important index which is prepared by the Niti Aayog by the name of Export Preparedness Index. I'll use the short form henceforth, EPI. Now, what is the utility of an Export Preparedness Index? You must have heard of the term competitive federalism. Now, what do you mean by competitive federalism? In a nutshell, competitive federalism means there is a promoted competition amongst the parts of India. Parts of India here basically refers to the states of India. Whenever any policy is taken wherein there is a competition, enhanced competition, higher competition which is promoted amongst the states, essentially that is referred to as competitive federalism. And one way to promote competitive federalism now is to promote the export preparedness amongst these particular states. Now, what do you mean by export preparedness here? Niti Aayog will basically consider 4 parameters or 4 pillars and will give weightage to all of these particular 4 pillars. Sir, what are the 4 pillars? Please mug up these particular pillars. Export policy, export business ecosystem, right, export, right, performance, etc. And has given weightage to all of these particular 4 parameters or 4 pillars, and you can see the weightages in this particular slide itself, and it will evaluate the performance of each of the states as well as union territories. Remember this. I am focusing on this for a very simple reason. If you have read the newspaper articles, which I am pretty sure all of you have read, they are only telling about the state governments, right? They will say that Gujarat for the second consecutive time has topped this particular index, and Gujarat is followed by many states such as Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, etc., etc., etc. But most of the newspaper articles have not focused on the fact that this index will not only rank the states but will also evaluate the performance of union territories and will rank even the union territories. So this particular index, which is prepared by Niti Aayog, has been prepared for the second time now. Earlier it was prepared for 2020, now this has been prepared for 2021. As already mentioned, there are 4 pillars, and within this particular 4 pillars, there are 11 sub-pillars. I'll repeat it. There are 4 pillars, and under these particular 4 pillars, totally, there are 11 sub-pillars. Sir, should I stop at this particular point? No. There is one more point here. And within this particular 11 sub-pillars, there are 60 indicators. Is it okay? Within this particular 11 sub-pillars, there are 60 indicators. So this is the second time Niti Aayog has published it. It has not changed the pillars. It has not changed the 11 sub-pillars. But have a look at this. It has actually made certain changes in the indicators. Certain number of indicators have been removed. 3 indicators have been removed, and around 8 indicators have been added. Why this has been done by Niti Aayog? The report mentions that Niti Aayog, before evaluating or conducting this particular exercise, conducted the consultations with the stakeholders. And based on the recommendations given by the stakeholders or the inputs given by the stakeholders, Niti Aayog has basically changed the composition of indicators. Some of the indicators have been taken out and some indicators have been added new. Now, what are the important points related to this particular index or index for 2021? Remember the state name? Gujarat has topped the list again, right? It is the second time the report has been published, and it is the second time that Gujarat has topped the list. That's the first statement. Second, Gujarat is followed by the next important states, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, etc. Now, suddenly the UPSC might ask you, let's say in interview, again, I don't expect this kind of a question to be asked in, let's say, prelims or mains, but in the interview, what if the interviewer asks you, why are these particular states generally topping? Why not, let's say, a state such as Uttar Pradesh, which is the most popular state in India? Why does it not top the export preparedness index? Why not another state, let's say, right, Madhya Pradesh? Why does it not top the index as such? Simple reason for this is, these states are coastal states. Is it okay? These particular states are coastal states, and by virtue of being coastal states, the export preparedness in these particular states is much higher compared to other states. That is the reason generally why you will see that Gujarat, Karnataka, Maharashtra, etc. are at the top of this particular list. Now, what about union territories? Which union territory is topping the list for this year? It is Delhi. Remember this? Delhi is the union territory which is topping the export preparedness index. Now, what is the importance of the index? Right? What is the importance? Why should we focus on the index? Whenever the measurement is done, or let's say the performance is evaluated by the Aayog, it will give you a very good indicator of how the states as well as the central government, how they are implementing policies to produce as well as export goods. Is it okay? Does the state government have a policy to promote export? Does the state government has a policy district-wise to promote export? Sir, why should the state have a district-wise policy to promote export? Simple reason for this particular statement is, Government of India in many of the schemes says that I want to develop districts as export hub. Is it okay? The central government has the objective of developing districts as export hubs. So when you say you want to develop districts as export hubs, don't you think you should have a policy for each of the districts? Definitely yes. Now, do all the states in India have a policy district-wise to promote exports? No. That is the observation in this particular index. Remember this. That is the observation. All the states do not have a policy district-wise to promote exports. There are some states. Right? This is one more very important point regarding the index. So one reason why we need to focus on the index is, we want to evaluate the performance of the states as well as the central government in order to implement a policy and export the goods from India. Second, do states have sufficient export infrastructure? If yes, which are the states which are performing very well? And if the state has sufficient or good export infrastructure, is it present throughout the state or is it present in certain specific regions? So what is the importance of this evaluation? If in a particular state, the export infrastructure is present in only one part of the state, it simply means region-wise Is it okay? Region wise, there is a difference in promotion of exports. In some of the regions, exports are promoted because sufficient infrastructure is there, and in other regions, export promotion is not very high. So don't you think that will also give you a very good indicator of what should be the focus of your policy? And this has been the observation of this particular index. It says that in case of India, the export infrastructure is not uniform. It is not present in all the regions. In certain regions, there is a concentration of export infrastructure, and it is very less in other regions. So there is a region-wise difference in the promotion of export infrastructure. And the second issue that has been flagged by this particular index is that in case of India, we do not have research and development infrastructure to promote exports of, right, let's say complex export products. Right? So these are some of the very important points related to export preparedness index. Now based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding export preparedness index EPI. First statement, it evaluates the states as well as union territories. Statement is true. Within the UTs, Delhi is the best performer. Correct. Within the states, Gujarat is the best performer. Correct. All the three statements are correct. Right option will be option D here. Let me go to the next article. It is related to sugar exports. Now before I go forward, have a look at this. In one newspaper, this was the headline. Indian government is expected to impose a certain restriction on sugar exports. But in other newspapers, right, the same discussion regarding sugar exports, headline was different. The other headline basically stated, government refutes, right, this particular article. Right, that is, Government of India clearly has stated, no, there are no plans of Government of India to impose the restrictions on sugar exports. Now what is this idea? What is the discussion here? Understand this very carefully. In case of the global market, sugar prices are actually rising up. They are increasing. Why? Brazil, which is one of the most important countries in terms of production and export of sugar, the production of sugar has been affected in the country. And as a result of this, supply to the global market has been affected. Second, ethanol production using sugarcane is being promoted now. The sugar mills are purchasing more and more sugarcane. Rather than converting that into sugar, they are converting that into ethanol. If you ask me why, sir, why is that happening? The crude oil prices in the international market or global market have been very high. In the last couple of months, they have hit as high as $130 per barrel. Even today, it is more than $100 per barrel. So with the rise in the crude oil prices, now these particular ethanol producers are prompted to produce more and more ethanol so that the blending will increase, consumption will increase, and they will earn better returns. So there is certain crunch with respect to the sugar supply in the domestic market or international market, to be more precise. Now what is expected here? Again, this is expectation, it has not yet happened. Because the sugar prices are increasing and exports from India are increasing, as a result of both of these events, the domestic availability of sugar might be lower. Is it okay? The availability of sugar in the domestic market will be lower, and because there is a festival season coming now, the demand for sugar will rise up, supply is lesser, right? The demand is higher. What will happen to market prices of the sugar? The market prices of the sugar will start rising upwards. So there is a fear, there is a concern that the domestic demand could be higher compared to supply in the domestic market, and that could push up the market prices in the domestic market. Right? And that is the reason the article says that Government of India is thinking of imposing an export limit. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement here. Government of India is thinking of imposing a limit of 8 million tons on the sugar exports, so that there is a sufficient supply in the domestic market and the market prices will be under control. But later, Government of India clarified that there is no plans, right, in government of India to impose export restrictions like this. And look at the argument given by the government of India. By the way, all of that information is not available in this article. It was discussed somewhere else. The government of India simply says that there is a carry-over stock. What do you mean by carry-over stock? From the last year, that is last sugar season, there is certain amount of stock which is remaining unsold. And that carry-over stock is 8.5 million tons. Right, to this particular 8.5 million tons, this year we are expecting the sugar production to be very high, that is 34 million tons. So carryover stock is 8.5, production in this year is 34, total availability in the domestic market will be 42.5 million tons. And in the domestic market, generally the demand is somewhere in the range of 27 million tons annually. So the total production of sugar will be 42.5, the demand will be 27 million tons. So how much will be left out in the domestic market? 15 million tons. Even if I allow, let's say, 8 million tons of sugar to be exported from India, even then I will have a carryover stock of somewhere around 7 million tons in the domestic market itself. So there are no plans of government of India to impose export restrictions of sugar from the domestic market to the international market. So this is in just related to the article provided here. Let me go to the next article. I'll be discussing two very important schemes today. One is Bharatmala, second one is Sagarmala. Let me start with the first one, Bharatmala project or Bharatmala Yojana. Now what is given in the article here? Very recently the assessment of Bharatmala Pariyojana has been done and Government of India says that this particular Yojana will not be completed in time. Sir, what do you mean by all of this? Under Bharatmala Pariyojana, phase 1, which was cleared by the government in 2017, Government of India targeted construction of roadways of 34,800 kilometers between 2017 and 2022. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Under phase 1 of Bharatmala Pariyojana, that would be implemented from 2017 to 2022, Government of India targeted construction of 34,800 kilometers length of road network in India. Now what the government now says is, we will not be able to complete this particular target of 34.8 thousand kilometers by 2022. It's not possible. It will be completed by financial year 27 now. Is it okay? It will be completed by financial year 27. Sir, what is the reason? Government of India says that land acquisition has become a problem. Right? In various parts of India in the last couple of years, lockdowns have been imposed. Accessibility of labor has become a problem. Construction has been affected. So we will not be able to complete it on time. We will complete it by financial year 27. That's a first very important observation. Second very important observation. Right? In fact, the standing committee, right, finds that the Government of India was never going to be able to achieve this particular target. Why? Out of 34,800 kilometers, only around 59% of the length of the road network has been allocated. Right? The projects worth 59% of the total length have been allocated right now. So there is no way, right, the target will be met by 2022. And much more surprising in addition to this is, if you look at how much of the road network has been completed right now, out of the target of 34.8 thousand kilometers, right, we have been able to complete only around 21% of this particular target, right, somewhere over 7,000 kilometers, only around 21%. And not just this, the standing panel says that originally the targeted expenditure under the Bharatmala Pariyojana 1 or the phase 1 was 5.35 lakh crore rupees. Is it okay? 5.35 lakh crore rupees. Now because of land acquisition problem, right, because the commodities have become costlier, right, the construction also has become costlier. And by 2027, when the project will be completed, right, the projected cost now will be 10.6 lakh crore rupees. from the original estimate of 5.3 lakh crore rupees. Now the projected estimates have been revised to 10.6 lakh crore rupees. That is almost double the cost would be incurred under Bharatmala Pariyojana scheme as such. Done? So these are some of the very important points related to the scheme which has been provided in the article. Now let me go to the next article. Sunflower oil imports. Now why this is there in the newspaper discussion? As such, understand this, in the last couple of years, edible oil imports have always been there in the news. Okay, as such they have been there in the news. Why? Around 60% of the requirement in India we actually import, right? Whatever is the demand for edible oil in the domestic market, we import it into India. And within the edible oils, majority of the import is in the form of palm oil. Remember this. Majority of the import is in the form of a palm oil. And following palm oil, you also import soybean oil. Following soybean, you import sunflower oil. Is it okay? So these are the three topmost edible oil imports into India. And out of 60% of edible oil imports that we do into India, that is, right, 60% requirement we import into India, 14% of the imports are in the form of sunflower oil. Sir, what is the connection of all of this with the article here? Let me connect it to the article. In the recent times, soybean oil production in Northern America has been affected. So supply to the international market will get affected. So the prices are rising up. Second, there is one country, right, that is Myanmar, which exports, right, lot of these particular the palm oil to the international market. And very recently there is a certain issue with respect to palm oil production. So the palm oil export also will be affected. Now what is left out here? Sunflower oil. In case of India, we import huge amount of a sunflower oil, and much more importantly, whatever is the import of sunflower oil into India, 90% of this, okay, 90% of this particular sunflower oil, we actually imported from two countries, Russia and Ukraine. Is it okay? 90% of the sunflower oil that we import are from two countries, Russia and Ukraine. And if you can see this particular data, right, have a look at this. In the year 2021, out of the total import, right, of sunflower oil of $2.4 billion, more than $2.1 billion are imported from Russia as well as Ukraine itself. And between two countries, remember, Ukraine is the topmost exporter of sunflower oil to India. This could be asked in UPSC prelims. Ukraine is the topmost exporter of sunflower oil to India. Now there is a war that has been happening here. Ukraine is unable to export the sunflower oil. So there are very two important events that have taken place very recently regarding sunflower oil imports in the context of India. First one, India wants to enter into a long-term deal with Mercosur countries so that we will be able to import sunflower oil from these particular countries. Mercosur is a trade grouping which consists of countries such as Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. So we want to import sunflower oil from these particular countries, but they are saying you will have to enter into long-term trades. But in addition to this, there is one more problem. Right now the imports that we have from these particular Mercosur countries, we are imposing tariffs on them. We will have to reduce the tariff, that is the import duty, so that we will be able to import, sell it in the domestic market. That's our first very important current affairs event. Second very important event is, very recently India has signed an agreement with Russia. Is it okay? They have signed an agreement, or let's say basically a contract with Russia, wherein they are going to purchase huge amount of a sunflower oil from Russia itself. So these are the two very important events in the context of sunflower oil in the current affairs. Please be very careful. Done? In addition to this, there is one more very important point here. India has signed the PTA with Mercosur countries or Mercosur grouping back in the year 2004. Remember this also. India signed an PTA, preferential trade agreement, with Mercosur countries back in the year 2004. All these points are very relevant for UPSC prelims. Done? Now based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements. Sunflower oil accounts for majority of the edible oil imports into India. Statement is wrong. Which would be the right statement here? palm oil. Is it okay? Remember this. Palm oil accounts for majority of edible oil imports into India. Second statement, India imported around 90% of sunflower oil. I'm writing sunflower oil here, but specifically this is a crude sunflower oil. Okay, 90% of crude sunflower oil from Russia and Ukraine in 2021. I've taken this statement from the article itself. Statement is true. Right, so the right option for this particular question will be option B. Let me go to the next article. One more scheme, Sagarmala scheme. Now very recently Government of India celebrated 7 years of Sagarmala, which essentially means it was implemented from 2015. Done? So we have celebrated 7 years of Sagarmala. Now what are the important points? If you read the article, nothing much important is given in the article. What they have basically told you is, 1, government would be implementing infrastructure worth $2 trillion, 2 trillion rupees, not dollars, 2 trillion rupees in the Sagarmala projects. That is one point of information. Second, there are more than 800 infrastructure projects which have been identified under Sagarmala. Second point, and within this particular 800 plus infrastructure projects, there are more than 100 PPP infrastructure projects, public-private partnership infrastructure projects have been identified and we are in the process of implementing. In addition to this, there is one more very important point, that is Government of India, by implementing Sagarmala project, they are trying to reduce the turnaround time. Is it okay? They are trying to reduce the turnaround time. Right now, as per this particular article, the turnaround time at major ports in India is somewhere around 26.5 hours. The Government of India has a target of reducing this to below 20 hours. Done? So these are the 4 points which have been mentioned in the article. And the article says, right, we have been able to construct these many projects, etc., related to Sagarmala. Now, if at all a critical evaluation question is asked by UPSC, what you are supposed to write? These are the achievements. What are you supposed to write? Right? Achievements? Yes, sir. What about critical evaluation? What about concerns related to this particular scheme? Are there any concerns? Definitely yes. Very recently, there is a standing committee on transportation which has submitted a report on implementation of Sagarmala projects. Is it okay? Right? Very recently, it was there in the newspapers, other newspapers, not in Hindu, etc. Now, what is this particular committee saying? What is this particular panel saying with regards to Sagarmala? Under Sagarmala, please understand what we want to achieve. What we are trying to do here is we want to modernize the ports. We want to develop, right, or we want to have a community-led development projects in these particular ports. We want to promote industrialization in these particular ports. We want to promote connectivity of these particular ports. But what this particular panel has found is, right, have a look at this. First and foremost, the panel says that in the last 1 year, out of these particular major ports, only one infrastructure project has been implemented. Is it okay? Out of all of these particular major ports, only one big project, infrastructure project has been implemented in the last 1 year. Second, you talk about promoting connectivity, right? That is, you want to connect to the ports with other parts of India. So you need to develop highways, you need to connect railway network with the port. What has been done under Sagarmala? The committee says that right now whatever connectivity projects are being done under Sagarmala, these are focused only on major ports. But don't you want to focus on minor ports also? Right? You should focus on minor ports also. So these infrastructure projects are majorly focused on major ports and they are ignoring minor ports. Second observation. Third observation, in order to promote connectivity of the ports, government has allocated more than 1.3 lakh crore rupees under the project. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. In order to promote connectivity, government has basically allocated more than 1.3 lakh crore rupees under the project. So far, as per the report, around 19,000 crore rupees only has been utilized. So allocation is 1.3 lakh. How much, right, are you able to utilize, or how much have you utilized so far? Around 19,000 crore rupees. Right? That is, in simple terms, funds are there, we are unable to utilize the funds. Fourth, you want to promote industrialization. Right, sir, what do you mean by port-led industrialization? For example, in the Sagarmala document, they say that we will promote setting up of clusters, industrial clusters in the port area. We'll promote port SEZs, special economic zones, etc. And this panel says that out of 12 major ports, out of 12 major ports, only in 8 of these particular major ports, they have started utilizing the land which has been given to them for promotion of industrialization. And even out of these particular 8 major ports, only 2 major ports have been able to completely utilize the land which has been allocated for the ports for promotion of industrialization. So these are some of the very important critical points that have been provided by a standing committee in terms of implementation of Sagarmala project. Done? So if at all a question is asked to you in UPSC mains, critically evaluate 7 years of implementation of Sagarmala. You have the starting point now, what we are trying to achieve. You know what has been achieved so far under Sagarmala, and you also know what are the drawbacks, what are the criticism, what are the concerns related to this particular project. Right? So this will give you sufficient number of, let's say, words, 250 words to answer the question. Done? Now next very important article, India UAE deal. Now before you tell me, sir, you have already discussed India UAE deal, I will not discuss what I have already discussed. Now there is one specific, right, the provision that is being discussed in recent times regarding India UAE deal. What is the specific provision I am talking of? They are talking about government procurement. Follow this very carefully. They are talking about government procurement. Sir, what do you mean by government procurement? Government of India will purchase goods and services from the market. All of you will agree? Right? If you ask me, sir, why does government procure goods and services? Answer is, government wants to construct, let's say, office. Government wants to, right, employ people, so they will require desk, they will require chair, ACs, water coolers, etc. Right? So there are various reasons why government will purchase goods and services from the market. Now so far, understand this very carefully, so far under the concept of government procurement, there are certain regulations which have been implemented by the government of India. And what are these regulations I am referring to? Government of India generally favors the micro, small, medium enterprises in terms of government procurement. That is, there are restrictions which have been imposed by the government. For example, sir, what are you talking of? Government of India says, if the government procurement, that is for a particular project, they are procuring, let's say, 200 crore worth of goods. The tender value is, let's say, 200 crores. Then foreign companies are not allowed to participate in this particular tender. Is it okay? Foreign companies are not allowed to participate. Sir, why this kind of a differentiation? Government says, I want to promote MSME sector. And is it allowed? Yes, under WTO, this is actually allowed. Is it okay? Under WTO, this is actually allowed. That is, respective government has to implement certain guidelines or policies, and based on the policy or regulation, they can have such kind of a policy where certain domestic companies will be given a preference over foreign companies. So understand this, whenever you are talking about government procurement, you are simply saying that, right, are the foreign companies allowed to participate? Are the private sector companies allowed to participate, or are there restrictions which have been imposed by the government? And just like any other country, Government of India has a restriction like this. Having said so, have a look at the next point here. There is one agreement, right? Remember the name of the agreement. Agreement on government procurement. Agreement on government procurement. Generally, this is not discussed in the textbooks or any other books. Focus on this. Agreement on government procurement. In short, they will refer to this as GPA. Under WTO, there are certain number of countries which have come together and they have signed this particular agreement. Right? I'll repeat it again. Under WTO, there are certain number of countries which have come together and they have signed this particular agreement. Is India participant, or let's say, is India a member of this agreement? No. Right? Now, what is this referred to as? There is a term called as plurilateral agreement. Remember the term. There is something called as plurilateral agreement. it is exactly opposite, or let's say it is different compared to the concept of multilateral agreement. Sir, what is the difference? Let me start with the example you will understand. I am pretty sure you have heard of GATT, you have heard of TRIPS, you have heard of Agreement on Agriculture. All these are the examples of multilateral agreements where WTO members will sign and implement these particular agreements. Whereas whenever you talk about plurilateral agreements, and by the way, this is there in the discussion now, I'll tell you the example also. There's a plurilateral discussion that is happening amongst various WTO members in regards to services. India is opposed to that. In regards to digital services, India is opposed to that, and that is another current affairs topic. But what do you mean by plurilateral? All the member countries of WTO are not going to sign this agreement. They are not members to this particular agreement. Right? In case of GPA, there are 48 WTO member countries. Is it okay? In case of GPA, how many member countries are there under WTO? Under this agreement, 48 member countries of WTO are following, right, or implementing the agreement on government procurement. And the basic idea of government procurement, right, is that, or the agreement on government procurement is that, imagine there are two countries, USA and UK. The companies of USA should be allowed to participate whenever the government of UK is procuring goods. Is it okay? The companies from USA should be allowed to participate. And in return, when USA government is procuring goods, the UK companies should be allowed to participate. That is the whole objective of agreement on government procurement. India has not signed this. India is an observer. Remember this. India has not signed this. India is an observer, and it has been an observer since 2010. And many of the times a country such as USA has asked government of India to sign this particular agreement. But so far Indian government has opposed this. They have resisted signing this particular agreement. Now what will happen if you sign the agreement? Once you sign the agreement, foreign companies which are present in India, or let's say want to participate in the government procurement, whenever government of India will procure the goods from the market. Now what is the problem here? The problem is whenever the government procurement will be opened up like this, domestic companies may or may not be in a position to compete with the foreign companies. I'll repeat the statement. Whenever the government procurement will be opened up for foreign companies participation like this, the domestic companies may or may not be in a position to compete with the foreign companies. And currently that is what is being discussed. Because the CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which has been signed between India and UAE, has a provision wherein the UAE companies can participate whenever government of India will procure the goods from the market. But there is again a condition. What is the condition? Only 34 government ministries will be covered under this. That is, whenever a tender is announced by any of the 34 government ministries, only those will be covered. Sir, what about central public sector enterprises? What about other agencies of the government of India? Will they be covered under this? Absolutely no. Right? So that is what is being discussed. What is the concern related to this? For the first time ever, government of India has opened up the government procurement for a foreign company. The concern is, one, Indian economy is yet to recover, which essentially means the domestic companies, especially MSME sector, is yet to recover from the hit that they have taken from the pandemic. Now you have opened up government procurement, UAE companies will participate. What if they start winning the bids? They will start providing the goods to government of India. And by the way, remember this, the government procurement size is not very small in India. Generally around 20 to 22% of GDP, that is the value of government procurement in India, which translates roughly around $500 billion. So that is the worth of the goods that the government actually procures. So the market size is very, very large here. So UAE companies might participate, they might win the bid, domestic companies may not be in a position to compete. Second concern is, if government of India is giving this facility to UAE companies, then all the other trading partners will start demanding the same. Now you'll have to throw open the whole government procurement for all the other countries. That is, those countries which have a trade agreement with you or will negotiate a trade agreement in the future. And as such, already there is a CEPA that India has with Japan. Is okay? There is a CEPA that India has with Japan, and there is one provision, one condition there. If government of India signs a CEPA with other country and gives more access to the second country compared to Japan, I'll repeat it. Under CEPA which Indian government has signed with Japan, if government of India enters into CEPA with another country, for example UAE, then the same access should be provided to even Japan. So there is all expectation that Japan will demand the same kind of access to government procurement. Having said so, what is the objective here? Why did government of India do? One, it will basically give you an idea that government of India's strategy is completely changing now. The strategy of government of India is completely changing. So far we have not given this access, now we are giving. And there is one very important point here, remember this. India and European Union were earlier negotiating a free trade agreement, and one of the problem was government procurement itself. Is it okay? The negotiations that are being conducted between India and European Union, one of the sticking points, one of the problem area was government procurement. They wanted access to government procurement, government of India was saying no. Now there is a change or shift in the strategy. So it might help government of India to enter into more and more free trade agreement. Second, if the competition improves, right, obviously the government of India will be on a winning side. Sir, how? Imagine, right now only domestic companies will participate. The lowest bid, that is a tender value, is let's say 100 crore rupees. Now if a foreign company participates, it provides a lowest tender value of let's say 90 crore rupees. Government of India's money spent will be much lower. So competition will promote, right, or it will promote competition. So these are some of the very important points related to the India-UAE deal which is being discussed in the newspaper. Done? Now based on this I have given a question. Consider the following statements regarding agreement on government procurement. This is a multilateral trade agreement. No, it is a plurilateral trade agreement. India is a member, signatory of this agreement. No, it is just having an observer status. It is not a member of this particular agreement. Right option will be option D, neither. Next article, Government of India now has proposed a two-stage review of PLI scheme. Now I will not be discussing about PLI scheme here. What is proposed here, that is important. Government of India so far has announced 14 PLI schemes. Is it okay? That is, for 14 sectors PLI schemes have been announced. And in many of these particular schemes, certain allocation has been done by the government. Right? Certain allocation, certain amount of money has been kept by the government. Now in certain sectors what has happened is, the money that has been allocated by the government is higher compared to, right, how many applications it has received, how much funding it has already allocated. Is it okay? Right, imagine I will allocate 1000 crore rupees for a particular sector, but I will receive very less application. I will end up paying only let's say 700 crore rupees to this sector. So there is a saving of 300 crore rupees in the sector. So Government of India now says, one, first stage, I will evaluate the implementation of this particular scheme. Right, in the first stage, I will evaluate implementation of this scheme. And in the second stage, whatever allocations have been done in certain sectors, I will look at the allocation now. Right, what do you mean by look at the allocation? Right, there are certain sectors where allocation has been higher, but the money that has been used is lesser, so savings are there. That is one point. Second point, there are certain sectors where allocation have done, but the ministry is asking for more allocations. For example, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has demanded more money. Right, the Ministry of Renewable Energy, they have also demanded more money. So Government of India says, I will look at the allocations, and whatever excess allocation or savings are there in one sector, I'll simply take it, allocate it to other sectors which are demanding for more funding. So this is a two-stage review of the PLI scheme which has been discussed in the article. Beyond this, sir, should I mug up all the 14 sectors? Right, don't, right, at least try to remember 4 to 5 sectors. Should I remember how much funds have been allocated to each of the sectors? Please don't. Should I remember which companies are participating in which sector? Please don't. Don't waste your time. Those are, right, very detailed, very high accounts of details. that much depth UPSC will not require. The last article for the day related to trade. For the first time ever, India has crossed the total trade, that is goods trade, of $1 trillion. Now before you say, sir, you have already discussed in the last week, what I have discussed in the last week is the merchandise exports crossing 400 billion for the first time. What I am mentioning here is total merchandise trade, right? What do you mean by total merchandise trade? Imports plus exports. Is it okay? When I say total merchandise trade, I am talking about imports plus exports. So what is given in the article? Very important points. One, for the first time ever, the total merchandise trade, that is between India and rest of the world, has crossed $1 trillion. What is the importance of this? India wants to become an export destination. India wants to become a global factory, and it also indicates that there is a rising demand for goods in other countries, which is a very good news. It is also one way a good news for India because we have imported, right? And understand this very carefully before you jump to conclusion. Whenever the imports into India will rise, one indication of that is there is a demand in the domestic market. I'll repeat the statement. Right, whenever the imports into India will increase, one outcome of that or one inference of that is India's demand for goods and services is also rising up. It is also increasing. Don't you think that is actually good news for Indian economy, because it indicates recovery in the market. Higher demand means recovery because people are spending more money. That is good. Right, so apart from this, what else has been provided in the article? Right, just remember this. India's exports to the global exports, or India's proportion in the global export market, accounts for 1.7%. Is that okay? Indian exports in the global export market is accounting for around 1.7%, and China's exports, right, are accounting for 2.6% of the total global exports. So these are some of the very important points which have been mentioned in this particular article. Beyond this, sir, should I mug up everything which is given in the article? Please don't do. Done? So these are the various important articles as well as the questions related to articles for the duration 26th March to 1st of April 2022. Now if you like this initiative, hit the like button, provide your valuable comments in the section below. And if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Thank you. Have a great day.